Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she bent down to collect the shredded paper targets from the shooting range. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the outdoor facility, and, even at 7 in the morning, the temperature was already climbing toward what would be another scorching day. She had been working at Desert Eagle shooting range for 3 years now, ever since she graduated high school, and the routine had become second nature to her. The early morning shift was always the quietest. Most recreational shooters didn't arrive until later in the day, leaving Sarah alone with the occasional law enforcement officer or military personnel who preferred to train before the crowds arrived. She didn't mind the solitude. It gave her time to think, to plan for her future, and to save money for the nursing school she desperately wanted to attend. Sarah's father had been a Marine, killed in action when she was 15. Her mother worked double shifts at the local hospital just to keep their small apartment, and there wasn't money for college. The shooting range job paid enough to help with bills and slowly build her college fund, but progress was frustratingly slow. Some days, she wondered if her dream of becoming a nurse would ever become reality. As she replaced the targets with fresh paper sheets, Sarah heard the rumble of a diesel truck pulling into the parking lot. She glanced over her shoulder to see a group of men in civilian clothes getting out of a black pickup truck. Something about the way they moved caught her attention. They walked with a confidence and awareness that was different from regular shooters. Their eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, and they moved with the kind of fluid efficiency that spoke of extensive training. The group of 6 men approached the range counter where Sarah was organizing ammunition boxes. The man in front was tall and lean, with dark hair and serious brown eyes. Despite wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, he carried himself with an unmistakable military bearing. "Morning," he said, his voice polite but professional. "We'd like to rent lanes 1 through 6 for extended training. We'll be here most of the day." Sarah nodded and pulled out the rental forms. "No problem. Will you need to rent firearms, or do you have your own?" "We brought our own equipment," the man replied. "I'm Jake Morrison, and these are my teammates. We're with a Navy unit stationed temporarily at Luke Air Force Base." As Sarah processed their paperwork, she noticed the names on the forms. The way they wrote, the precision of their signatures, even their posture while waiting, all suggested these weren't ordinary Navy personnel. She had seen enough military customers to recognize Special Operations Forces when she saw them. "Take lanes 1 through 6, Sarah said, handing Jake the lane assignments. "The range is yours until 4 this afternoon. Safety rules are posted, but I'm guessing you already know them." Jake smiled for the first time, and it transformed his entire face. "Yes, ma'am. We'll follow all range protocols." Sarah watched as the team moved to their assigned lanes with practiced efficiency. They unpacked cases containing weapons she had only seen in movies, sophisticated rifles with advanced optics and modifications that clearly cost more than most people's cars. Their movements were coordinated and professional as they set up their equipment and began what was obviously a carefully planned training exercise. For the next 2 hours, Sarah went about her duties while the sound of controlled, precise gunfire echoed across the range. Unlike recreational shooters who often fired rapidly and wildly, these men took measured, deliberate shots. Each round was fired with purpose, and the brief pauses between shots suggested careful aiming and breathing control. Around 10 o'clock, Sarah noticed that the team's shooting had stopped. Looking down the range, she saw them gathered around lane 3, engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion. Jake was pointing at targets downrange while his teammates examined their weapons and adjusted their equipment. Curious despite herself, Sarah grabbed a fresh stack of targets and walked down to lane 3 under the pretense of checking if they needed replacements. As she approached, she could hear fragments of their conversation. "The wind compensation isn't working," one of the men was saying, frustration evident in his voice. "I'm consistently pulling left at 400 meters. "It's not the wind," Jake replied, studying the target through high-powered binoculars. "Your fundamentals are solid, but something's affecting your natural point of aim. Try adjusting your stance." Sarah hesitated, then cleared her throat softly. The 6 men turned to look at her, and she suddenly felt very young and out of place. These were clearly elite warriors, and she was just a 19-year-old girl who worked at a shooting range. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I couldn't help but notice you're having some difficulty with the 400-meter targets. I work here every day, and I know this range better than anyone." The men exchanged glances, and Sarah could almost feel their skepticism. She was used to it. most customers, especially military and law enforcement, assumed that a young woman couldn't possibly know anything useful about firearms or marksmanship. Jake studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "What did you have in mind?" Sarah took a deep breath. The range was built on an old mining claim. There are underground caverns and tunnels that create unpredictable air currents, especially around the 400-meter mark. The wind flags don't show it because it's happening close to the ground. You need to adjust your elevation by about half a minute of angle low, and compensate for a 2-mile-per-hour crosswind from the left that doesn't show on the surface. The team members looked at each other with raised eyebrows. Sarah could practically see them wondering how this teenage range employee could possibly know something they didn't. "How do you know all this?" asked one of the men, a burly redhead with kind eyes. "I've been watching people shoot this range for 3 years," Sarah replied. "My dad taught me about ballistics before he died in Afghanistan. I've seen hundreds of excellent shooters struggle with that exact same target, and I've figured out the pattern." Jake stepped forward, studying her with new interest. "What was your father's unit?" "2nd Battalion, 9th Marines," Sarah said, lifting her chin slightly. "Staff Sergeant Miguel Martinez. He died at FOB Shank in 2019. The change in the men's demeanor was immediate and profound. The skepticism disappeared, replaced by respect and something that looked almost like protective concern. Jake nodded slowly. "I knew your father," he said quietly. "Miguel Martinez. He was one of the best Marines I ever worked with. He saved my life in Helmand Province in 2018. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. In all the years since her father's death, she had never met anyone who had served with him, anyone who could tell her stories about who he was as a soldier rather than just as her dad. "You knew him," she whispered, her professional composure cracking slightly. "He was attached to our unit for a joint operation," Jake explained, his voice gentle. "When our convoy hit an IED, your father pulled 3 wounded SEALs out of a burning vehicle while under enemy fire. He was supposed to be rear security, but he chose to risk his life for strangers. It was the kind of courage that defines the best of what we do." Sarah blinked back tears, overwhelmed by hearing about her father's heroism from someone who had witnessed it firsthand. Her mother had received the official reports, but hearing it from Jake made her father's sacrifice feel immediate and real in a way it never had before. "He talked about you constantly," Jake continued. "About how proud he was of his daughter, how smart you were, how you wanted to be a nurse and help people. He carried your picture everywhere." The other team members stood quietly, understanding the significance of this unexpected connection. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to regain her composure. "I'm sorry," she said, embarrassed by her emotional reaction. "I didn't mean to interrupt your training." "Don't apologize," Jake said firmly. "Your father would be proud to see who you've become. And if you really know how to solve our 400-meter problem, we'd be grateful for your help." Sarah straightened up, channeling the confidence her father had always encouraged in her. "The adjustment I mentioned will work, but there's more to it than just the wind compensation. The morning sun creates a thermal effect that changes throughout the day. Right now, at 10 a.m., you need to aim exactly where I said. But by noon, the effect will shift, and you'll need to adjust again." Jake looked impressed despite himself. "You've really studied this range." "I study everything," Sarah said with a small smile. "My dad always said that knowledge is the one thing nobody can take away from you. He taught me that understanding the details other people miss is what separates good shooters from great ones." "Your father was a wise man," Jake said. He paused for a moment, then made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Would you be willing to help us with our training today? We could use someone with your knowledge of this range, and I think your father would approve of you helping his fellow warriors." Sarah felt a surge of pride and nervous excitement. "I'd be honored to help." Jake turned to his teammates. "Gentlemen, meet our new range consultant. I have a feeling we're about to learn something important." As Sarah walked back to get her notebook where she kept detailed observations about the range conditions, she felt her father's presence more strongly than she had in years. She was about to step into a world she had only dreamed about, working alongside the kind of elite warriors her father had died protecting. She didn't know yet that this single day would set in motion events that would change her life forever, opening doors she never knew existed and revealing strength she never knew she possessed. Behind her, Jake watched her go with thoughtful eyes. There was something special about Miguel Martinez's daughter, something that went beyond her knowledge of ballistics and range conditions. She had the same quiet strength he had seen in her father, the same unwavering determination to help others succeed. Jake had learned long ago to trust his instincts about people, and every instinct he had was telling him that Sarah Martinez was going to be important to their mission in ways none of them could yet imagine. The morning sun climbed higher in the desert sky, and the next phase of an extraordinary day was about to begin. Sarah returned with her weathered notebook, its pages filled with 3 years of meticulous observations about wind patterns, temperature variations, and the shooting challenges unique to Desert Eagle Range. The Navy SEALs watched with growing respect as she opened to detailed charts showing how atmospheric conditions affected bullet trajectory at different distances and times of day. "Your father taught you to keep records like this?" Jake asked, examining the precise diagrams and calculations that filled every page. "He said that successful people in any field are the ones who pay attention to details others ignore," Sarah replied, flipping to a section labeled 400-meter anomalies. "He made me promise to approach everything systematically, whether it was schoolwork or understanding how things work." The team gathered around as Sarah explained her findings. She pointed to a hand-drawn map of the range showing underground features she had researched at the county records office. Her analysis included historical mining reports, geological surveys, and her own observations of how different shooters performed under various conditions. "This is incredible work," said Tommy Chen, the team's communications specialist. "You've essentially created a complete environmental analysis of this facility." Sarah felt a flush of pride at the professional recognition. "I had a lot of time to observe and think. Most people come here just to shoot targets, but I started wondering why some excellent shooters struggled in specific conditions while others didn't seem affected." Jake nodded appreciatively. "That kind of analytical thinking is exactly what we need. Marcus, let's test Sarah's theory." Marcus Williams, a tall African-American sniper with steady hands and patient eyes, moved to lane 3 and began setting up his rifle according to Sarah's recommendations. The weapon was unlike anything Sarah had seen civilian shooters use, with a precision scope and custom modifications that spoke of countless hours of refinement. "I'll take 3 shots using standard compensation, then 3 with Sarah's adjustments," Marcus announced, settling into position behind his rifle. The first 3 shots were technically excellent by any normal standard, but, as Sarah had predicted, they grouped slightly left and high of the target center. Marcus paused, made the adjustments Sarah had suggested, controlled his breathing, and fired 3 more rounds. The difference was immediate and unmistakable. The second group was perfectly centered, with all 3 shots touching in a cluster smaller than a quarter at 400 meters. "Outstanding," Marcus said, looking up from his scope with genuine admiration. "Sarah, that was some of the best range analysis I've encountered in 15 years of military service." The entire team was now looking at Sarah with new respect, but also with something else she couldn't quite identify. There was an intensity in their expressions that made her think they were evaluating her for something beyond just range assistance. "Sarah," Jake said carefully, "what are your plans for the future? Are you planning to stay here at the range long term?" "I'm saving money for nursing school," she replied honestly. "My goal is to become a trauma nurse, maybe work in an emergency room or with military medical units. I want to help people the way my dad helped his Marines." Jake exchanged meaningful glances with his teammates before responding. "That's admirable, and it fits with something we've been discussing. Our unit has a unique mission profile that requires us to work in diverse environments around the world. We often need local expertise, people who can analyze situations and provide insights that might not be obvious to outsiders." Sarah wasn't sure where this conversation was leading, but she sensed it was important. "What kind of missions?" "We can't go into specifics," Jake said, "but I can tell you that we work to protect American interests and help people in dangerous situations. Sometimes that means rescue operations, sometimes it means training local forces, and sometimes it means providing security for humanitarian missions." Tommy leaned forward. "The point is, we frequently need people who can think analytically, adapt quickly, and maintain composure under pressure. People who notice details others miss and can solve problems creatively. People like you," added Marcus, cleaning his rifle with practiced efficiency. Sarah felt her heart racing. "Are you offering me some kind of job?" "Not exactly," Jake said. "We're offering you an opportunity to develop skills that would serve you well in any career, but especially in emergency medicine. We have training programs that teach advanced first aid, crisis management, and analytical techniques that would make you a better nurse than any traditional program could. David Park, the team's medic, spoke up for the first time. I started as a Navy corpsman before joining this unit. The emergency medical training we provide is unlike anything available in civilian programs. You'd learn to save lives under the most challenging conditions imaginable. Sarah's mind was racing with possibilities she had never considered. What would this involve? I can't just abandon my responsibilities here. We're not asking you to, Jake assured her. What we're proposing is a gradual process. You could start by helping us with training exercises on weekends and evenings, learning our methods while keeping your current job. If it works out for everyone, there might be opportunities for more extensive involvement. Including full funding for medical school, David added quietly. The Navy has programs that would pay for your nursing education in exchange for service commitment. You could graduate with no debt and guaranteed placement in top medical facilities. Sarah felt dizzy with the magnitude of what they were suggesting. It seemed too good to be true, too much like a dream she had never dared to have. Why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't really know anything about me except that I understand this shooting range. Jake was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. Your father saved my life, Sarah. That creates a debt I can never fully repay. But, beyond that, you've demonstrated qualities we desperately need in our work. You're observant, analytical, brave enough to speak up when you have valuable input, and you approach problems systematically instead of just guessing. Plus, Marcus added with a grin, anyone who can solve a ballistics problem that's been frustrating Navy SEALs clearly has skills worth developing. Sarah looked around at the 6 men who had walked into her ordinary morning and turned her entire world upside down. They were looking at her not with pity or charity, but with genuine professional respect. They saw potential in her that she was only beginning to recognize in herself. If I said yes, she said slowly, what would be the first step? Basic skills assessment, Jake replied. We'd spend the rest of today working with you on various exercises to see how you handle different challenges. Physical fitness, problem solving under pressure, medical scenarios, that kind of thing. Think of it as a very comprehensive job interview. And if I don't measure up? Then, you go back to your regular routine with our gratitude for helping us today, Jake said. But, Sarah, I knew your father well enough to be confident that you won't disappoint us. Sarah thought about her mother working double shifts, about her slow progress toward nursing school, about her father's dreams for her future. She thought about the respect she saw in these men's eyes and the opportunities they were offering. Most of all, she thought about her father's voice telling her that knowledge was power and that she should never be afraid to reach for something better. Okay, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. Let's see what I'm capable of. Jake smiled, and she could see approval and something that might have been pride in his expression. Outstanding. Let's start with some medical scenarios. David, set up a casualty simulation. As the team began preparing their first assessment, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and terror that reminded her of the first time her father had taken her shooting. She was about to discover capabilities she didn't know she possessed, face challenges that would push her beyond her comfort zone, and possibly find a path toward a future she had never imagined. The morning sun was approaching its peak, and Sarah Martinez was about to begin the most important test of her young life. She didn't know yet that by the end of the day, she would have proven herself worthy of opportunities that would take her around the world and put her in situations where her father's lessons about courage, intelligence, and helping others would be tested in ways she could never have anticipated. Behind her, Jake watched her prepare for the challenges ahead with the same mixture of protectiveness and professional assessment he had once felt watching her father gear up for dangerous missions. Miguel Martinez had been one of the finest Marines he had ever known, and Jake was beginning to suspect that his daughter might be capable of even greater things. David Park had transformed a corner of the shooting range into a realistic medical emergency scenario. Using mannequins, fake blood, and sound effects from a portable speaker, he created the atmosphere of a crisis situation that made Sarah's heart race even though she knew it wasn't real. You're a medic responding to a vehicle accident, David explained, his voice taking on the serious tone of an instructor. You have 2 casualties. One appears to have severe bleeding from a leg wound, the other is unconscious with possible head trauma. You have basic medical supplies and need to prioritize treatment. Begin. Sarah knelt beside the first mannequin, her mind racing through everything she had learned from her mother's medical textbooks and her own research about emergency medicine. The artificial wound looked disturbingly realistic, and the sound effects of traffic and distance sirens created an atmosphere of urgency that made her hands shake slightly. "Control the bleeding first," she murmured to herself, applying pressure to the wound with gauze from the medical kit. "Airway, breathing, circulation. Always ABC." She worked methodically, demonstrating proper technique for applying a tourniquet while explaining her reasoning aloud. "The bleeding is arterial based on the color and pressure. Tourniquet goes 2 inches above the wound, tighten until bleeding stops, note the time." Moving to the second casualty, Sarah checked for breathing and pulse, then carefully examined the head injury without moving the patient's neck. "Possible cervical spine injury, so I'm maintaining head and neck stabilization while checking pupils for signs of brain trauma." The SEALs watched silently as Sarah worked through the scenario with increasing confidence. Her movements became more assured as muscle memory from countless hours of studying took over. She talked through each decision, explaining her medical reasoning in terms that showed deep understanding of trauma care principles. "Time," David called after 10 minutes that had felt like hours. Sarah sat back on her heels, suddenly, aware that she was breathing hard and sweating despite the morning coolness. "How did I do?" "Better than some military medics I've worked with," David said with honest admiration. "Your technique is solid, your prioritization is correct, and you stayed calm under pressure." "Where did you learn trauma medicine?" "Books, online courses, and watching my mother work," Sarah replied. "She's an ER nurse, and I've been studying medical procedures since I was 14. I volunteer at the animal shelter too, helping with basic veterinary care." Jake nodded approvingly. "Medical training is critical in our work, but it's only one component." Tommy set up the communications exercise. The next challenge involved a complex radio communication scenario where Sarah had to relay information between multiple units while tracking their positions on a map. Tommy had created a simulated crisis involving hostage rescue, and Sarah's job was to coordinate information flow and maintain situational awareness for all teams. "Red team, this is base, confirm your position," Sarah spoke into the radio headset, quickly marking locations on her map as responses came in. The exercise involved multiple frequencies, code words, and constantly changing tactical situations that required her to think several steps ahead. What impressed the SEALs most was how quickly Sarah adapted to their communication protocols. She asked clarifying questions when she wasn't sure about procedures, but she grasped the essential concepts immediately. Within minutes, she was coordinating complex movements and providing clear, concise updates that would have been critical in a real operation. "Base, Red team reports civilians in the target building, requesting guidance on approach route," came a voice through the radio. Sarah studied her map, considering the information she had been given about enemy positions and safe corridors. "Red team, recommend approach from the northwest using cover of abandoned vehicles. Blue team will provide overwatch from building 3. "Outstanding," Tommy said as the exercise concluded. "You have natural aptitude for communications and situational awareness. That's not something we can easily teach." The afternoon continued with increasingly challenging scenarios. Marcus tested her observation skills by having her study a complex photograph for 30 seconds, then answer detailed questions about what she had seen. Her ability to notice and remember specific details impressed even the experienced SEALs. "How many people were in the photograph?" Marcus asked. 7. 3 men, 4 women. The man in the blue shirt had a tattoo on his left wrist, possibly military. The woman by the window was holding something in her right hand that could have been a communication device. There was a vehicle parked outside with license plate starting with AZ4, but I couldn't see the full number. The vehicle's license plate was AZ4237, Marcus confirmed. Most people miss half those details even with multiple viewings. As the day progressed, Sarah found herself rising to meet every challenge they presented. Physical fitness tests revealed that years of active work at the shooting range had given her better conditioning than she realized. Problem-solving exercises showed her ability to think creatively under pressure. Most importantly, she demonstrated the kind of calm competence under stress that couldn't be faked or easily taught. "There's one more test," Jake announced as the sun began its descent toward the desert horizon. "This one is different from the others." He led Sarah to a shooting bench where an unfamiliar rifle lay waiting. It was sleeker and more sophisticated than even the weapons the SEALs had been using earlier, with an advanced scope and custom modifications that spoke of precision engineering. "This is a Accuracy International AXMC," Jake explained, his voice taking on a reverent tone. "It's one of the finest precision rifles ever built. Marcus normally shoots this weapon, but we want to see how you handle it." Sarah's eyes widened. She had dreamed of shooting such an advanced rifle but never imagined having the opportunity. "I've never shot anything like this before." "Your father was an excellent marksman," Jake said quietly. "Let's see what he passed on to you." Sarah settled behind the rifle, adjusting the stock and scope to fit her smaller frame. The weapon felt different from anything she had shot before, heavier and more substantial, but also perfectly balanced. She could feel the quality of its construction in every component. "Target is at 600 meters, Marcus announced, pointing to a small target barely visible in the distance. "That's twice the distance you were helping us with this morning." "Wind is variable, light is changing as the sun gets lower. This is an extremely challenging shot for anyone." Sarah studied the conditions, applying everything she had learned about the range throughout the day. She noted the wind flags, observed the heat shimmer rising from the desert floor, and calculated the ballistic compensation needed for the extended distance. "Take your time," Jake encouraged. "There's no pressure here. Just show us what you can do." Sarah controlled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle's recoil was different from what she was used to, but she managed to maintain her sight picture and watch the bullet's impact through the scope. The shot hit low and slightly right of center, a respectable result for her first attempt with an unfamiliar rifle at an extreme distance. "Good first shot," Marcus said encouragingly. "The rifle shoots differently than what you're used to. Make your adjustments and try again." Sarah made careful corrections based on her first shot's impact and her growing understanding of the rifle's characteristics. Her second shot was closer to center, and her third shot hit within the target's high-scoring ring. "Excellent progression," Jake observed. "Most people need dozens of shots to achieve that kind of improvement with an unfamiliar weapon system." As Sarah prepared for her fourth shot, something shifted in her understanding of the rifle and the shooting conditions. All the factors she had been trying to calculate consciously suddenly came together intuitively. She felt the wind, understood the rifle's preferences, and knew exactly where to aim. Her fourth shot hit dead center of the target at 600 meters. The shooting range fell completely silent except for the wind rustling through the desert scrub. Sarah looked up from the scope to find all 6 SEALs staring at her with expressions of amazement and something approaching awe. "That," Marcus said slowly, "was an exceptional shot. I'm not sure I could have done better with that rifle under these conditions." Jake was studying Sarah with new intensity, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "Sarah, I need to ask you something important. Are you ready for your life to change in ways you can't imagine?" Sarah felt the weight of the moment, understanding that her answer would determine the course of her future. She thought about her father, about his courage in the face of danger, about his dreams for her to help people and make a difference in the world. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm ready." Jake smiled, but there was something serious and almost protective in his expression. "Then, let's talk about what comes next, because what we're about to offer you is bigger than weekend training or college funding. We think you have the potential to join our unit as a full team member." The desert wind picked up, stirring dust around the shooting range as Sarah Martinez prepared to hear an offer that would take her from a small-town shooting range to classified missions around the world, following in her father's footsteps but carving her own unique path as one of the few women ever invited to join an elite Navy SEAL unit. Sarah sat in stunned silence as Jake's words sank in. Join their unit as a full team member? The possibility seemed so far beyond anything she had ever imagined that she struggled to process what he was actually suggesting. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "Women aren't allowed in Navy SEAL units." "Traditional SEAL teams, no," Jake confirmed. "But our unit operates under different authority. We're a joint special operations task force that includes members from all branches of military and selected civilians with critical skills. Our mission requires diverse capabilities, and gender is less important than competence." David leaned forward, his expression serious but encouraging. "Sarah, what you demonstrated today isn't just impressive, it's exceptional. Your analytical skills, medical knowledge, marksmanship ability, and, most importantly, your ability to stay calm and think clearly under pressure, those are exactly the qualities we need. But, I'm just 19 years old, Sarah protested. I work at a shooting range. I've never been in the military or had any real training. Your father wasn't much older when he first deployed, Marcus pointed out gently. Age isn't the determining factor, maturity is. And everything we've seen today shows that you have the mental toughness and adaptability we need. Tommy pulled out a tablet and showed Sarah a series of photographs from around the world. Our missions take us to places where traditional military units can't operate effectively. Remote medical clinics in war zones, refugee camps, disaster areas, places where we need people who can blend in, adapt quickly, and provide critical support in dangerous conditions. The medical component is especially important, David added. We regularly work in areas where advanced medical care isn't available. Having a team member with your medical knowledge and steady hands under pressure could mean the difference between life and death for civilians and team members alike. Jake watched Sarah carefully as she studied the photographs, gauging her reaction to what they were showing her. This isn't a decision you need to make today, or even this week. What we're proposing is a comprehensive training program that would start gradually and build over time. You'd keep your current job initially while attending evening and weekend training sessions. What kind of training? Sarah asked, her practical mind focusing on concrete details to help process the enormous scope of what they were discussing. Advanced medical training beyond anything available in civilian programs, David explained. Combat medicine, trauma surgery, emergency procedures for situations where you might be the only medical professional available for hundreds of miles. Physical conditioning and combat training, Marcus continued. Self-defense, weapons proficiency, survival skills, the ability to protect yourself and others in dangerous environments. Languages, cultural awareness, and intelligence analysis, Tommy added. Many of our missions require deep understanding of local customs and the ability to work effectively with people from very different backgrounds. And advanced marksmanship training, Jake concluded. Your natural shooting ability is impressive, but we develop it far beyond what you can imagine right now. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were describing. It was like they were offering her a chance to step into a completely different life, one where she could help people on a global scale while honoring her father's military legacy in ways she had never dreamed possible. What about my mother? She asked, the practical concerns of her real life reasserting themselves. I can't just abandon her. She depends on my income from the range. We've thought about that, Jake said gently. Your mother would receive a family support stipend that would more than replace your current income. Plus, she'd have access to military family benefits including medical coverage. Your father's sacrifice has earned your family more support than you've been receiving. The offer seemed too good to be true, too much like a fantasy. Sarah found herself looking for the catch, the hidden costs that such an opportunity would surely require. What would you need from me in return? She asked directly. This level of training and support must come with significant obligations. Honesty, dedication, and willingness to put the mission above personal comfort, Jake replied without hesitation. The work we do is dangerous, and it requires absolute commitment to the team and to protecting innocent people. You'd be deploying to some of the most challenging places on Earth. How dangerous? Sarah pressed, needing to understand exactly what she might be agreeing to. The team members exchanged glances before Jake answered with complete honesty. We've lost people. Good people, people with families and dreams and everything to live for. What we do matters, but it comes with real risks that we never minimize or hide from potential team members. Sarah appreciated his directness. She had grown up in a military family and understood that service came with sacrifice. Her father's death had taught her that lesson in the most painful way possible. If I said yes, when would this all start? Background investigation and security clearance processing would begin immediately, Jake explained. That takes several months. During that time, you'd start preliminary training while maintaining your current life. If everything checks out and you successfully complete initial training, you'd transition to full-time status with the team. Sarah looked around at the 6 men who had walked into her ordinary morning and presented her with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. They were looking at her with respect, encouragement, and something that might have been hope. Can I have some time to think about it? Of course, Jake said immediately. This is a life-changing decision that you shouldn't make under pressure. Take all the time you need. Actually, Sarah said, surprising herself with her own words, I don't need time to think. My father taught me that when opportunity knocks, especially opportunity to serve something bigger than yourself, you don't hesitate. She stood up, extending her hand to Jake with a confidence that seemed to emerge from somewhere deep inside her. I accept your offer. When do we start? Jake shook her hand with a smile that lit up his entire face. Welcome to the team, Sarah. Your father would be incredibly proud. As the other team members gathered around to congratulate her, Sarah felt a profound sense of rightness about her decision. This morning she had been a 19-year-old girl with limited options and distant dreams. Now she was embarking on a path that would take her around the world, allow her to help people in the most challenging circumstances imaginable, and honor her father's legacy in ways that exceeded anything she had ever hoped for. One more thing, Jake said as the congratulations died down. Your first training assignment starts tomorrow. David will begin teaching you advanced trauma medicine, and Marcus will start developing your marksmanship skills. We don't waste time in this unit. Tomorrow? Sarah asked, feeling a flutter of nervous excitement. Tomorrow, Jake confirmed. Welcome to the most challenging and rewarding experience of your life. As the sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Sarah Martinez stood at the threshold of an extraordinary future. In 12 hours, she had gone from swapping out paper targets to being invited to join one of America's most elite special operations units. The transformation seemed impossible, but, as she looked at her new teammates and felt the weight of her father's legacy supporting her decision, she knew that impossible was just another word for a challenge she hadn't conquered yet. The shooting range where she had spent 3 years saving money for nursing school would always be special to her, but tomorrow she would begin training for a career that would combine her medical ambitions with her father's warrior spirit in ways that neither of them could have imagined. Sarah Martinez was no longer just Miguel Martinez's daughter, she was about to become Sarah Martinez, special operations medic and precision marksman, ready to serve her country and protect innocent people anywhere in the world that duty might call her. The desert wind picked up one final time as the team packed their equipment, carrying with it the promise of adventures and challenges that would test everything Sarah thought she knew about herself and reveal capabilities she was only beginning to discover.